Hi, my name's Niko. I'm in my 4th year of the Interdisciplinary Studies program with a minor in sociology. I'm here as the Newsbeat reporter working with the Capilano Courier to bring you news on what our Students Union is doing and increase accountability among the student population. Every year, the CSU holds elections in order to elect the CSU Board of Directors. This Board of Directors is responsible for representing us as students and advocating for us. They work for us. We pay them through the use of our student fees. The Board of Directors is in their position for a year before the next election takes place and a new Board of Directors is elected. Every CSU board member is responsible to attend the CSU Board of Directors meeting, as well as join additional committees. There's committees such as the Student Engagement Committee, which is responsible for planning events, the Campaigns and Advocacy Committee, which is responsible for different campaigns. Currently, we're doing a campaign to improve transit on the North Shore, as an example. There's the Governance Committee that decides on internal policies, which is where the decision to ban in-classroom campaigning was made. The smaller committees have discussions about these policies and campaigns before they go to either the Executive Committee or the Board of Directors to be voted on and finalized by the Board of Directors that we as students elect. It's really important that we elect responsible and dedicated student leaders because every term when we're paying our tuition, we're charged CSU fees. These CSU fees go to the operations of Capilano Student Union, including the paychecks that the Board of Directors receive. The executive board members are paid close to $2,000 a month through the use of our student fees. It's important that they're held accountable for the ethical use of our student fees and that they're fulfilling their roles and responsibilities as diligently as possible. The Capilano Courier will be attending all CSU board meetings to report to you students about what decisions our Students Union is making. This is important because we pay for the CSU through the use of our student fees, and the CSU is responsible for representing us as students and our interests and for advocating for us. So let's get back into it. What happened at the last CSU board meeting? A significant decision that was made at the last CSU board meeting was prohibiting in-classroom campaigning during the elections. The CSU Board of Directors voted to ban in-classroom campaigning regardless of if an instructor consents to campaigning activity or not. So this motion was brought forward by the president, Angad Brar. The reason cited for banning in-classroom campaigning is separation from academics and politics, as well as the fact that campaigning in classrooms takes up classroom time. There was concern expressed from the Board of Governors representative, Sofia Cara, that if we take away options for how students can campaign, that less students will vote. In the last few election cycles, voter turnout has increased significantly. However, there were concerns expressed that if we take away campaigning options, that the voter turnout will reduce as a result. Some other concerns that were expressed was for the future of the CSU elections. If we take away the options for campaigning, how does that impact the CSU in future years? There was also concern expressed about how this will impact the Kalahai campus and the Squamish campus. So the banning of in-classroom campaigning would prohibit all campaigning classrooms, including online classrooms, physical classrooms, as well as e-learn messaging boards, as well as our other campuses, including the Sunshine Coast and Squamish campus. I don't know, should I name drop or should I just be like, yeah, name drop? So the board member Yuvraj expressed sentiment that it may be disrespectful for candidates if students aren't interested in listening to what they have to say in class. The Board of Governors representative, Sofia Cara, requested information from the president, Angad Brar. She asked if there were any complaints received from students about campaigning and if they were formal complaints. There were complaints received, but none of them were formal complaints. So instead of there being formal complaints about students campaigning in classrooms, there were students coming up to the president and just informally complaining about how they didn't like how some students were campaigning in classes. In order to submit a formal complaint, you can email the elections administrator or go to the CSU website and fill out their official complaint form. So there were no official complaints received from students or from instructors about campaigning in classrooms. One of the reasons that was cited for banning in classroom campaigning is that it may be disrespectful to instructors. However, it was always up to the instructor's discretion if they allow students to campaign in class. If they campaign for longer than the allocated time, the instructor has the right to stop the student from speaking. The student senator, Priya McMurtry, expressed sentiment about how if we do this to our campus and we prohibit in-classroom campaigning, how will that impact the other campuses? So the Sunshine Coast campus and the Squamish campus are relatively small campuses, often feel quite removed from our main campus over here in the campus community we've built up. In-classroom campaigning is one of the primary ways students can get their message across and how many students learn about the elections in the first place. If we take away in-classroom campaigning from the Sunshine Coast campus and the Squamish campus, that means that leaves very few options for candidates from those campuses to campaign. That only leaves speaking to students like in the hallway or online campaigning. Like the Capilano Courier, every year we host a candidate forum, but the Sunshine Coast campus and the Squamish campus aren't able to easily access our candidate forum here. By taking away campaigning options for those students, that leaves them with very few options to get their message across. Normally in board meetings, every board member is allowed to speak twice, but in this board meeting, there were 4 rounds of discussion before this item moved to a vote. When the item moved to a vote, there were only 3 board members who voted against this motion. All other board members voted in favor of this motion, meaning it passed. So now in-classroom campaigning is prohibited on all campuses. When there were questions about how this policy of banning in-classroom campaigning would be enforced, Angad Brar said that if candidates are caught campaigning in classrooms, they should be disqualified, and that we should contact the instructor of the class to see if the candidate campaigned in that classroom. Prior to the banning of campaigning in classrooms, candidates had to ask for permission to campaign in those classes and had up to 5 minutes to campaign before or after the class. With this change, instructors will be asked to confirm if candidates campaign in those classes or not. This would require more out of instructors and therefore be more disruptive than how campaigning was prior when students could campaign in those classes. The president who brought forward this motion was asked if he campaigned in classrooms, and he himself campaigned in classrooms before bringing forward this motion to ban in-classroom campaigning. And he said he campaigned in about 2 classrooms and that it would just be about 20-30 voters per classroom, and felt it wasn't worth his time to campaign in classrooms, and that candidates campaign in other parts of the university, it wouldn't leave out voters. Last year, the Capilano Student Union Board of Directors had a lot of issues with non-attendance. In particular, there was an executive board member, the VP Student Affairs, who continually did not fulfill his roles and responsibilities, primarily being attending the Board of Directors meeting, and therefore lost a percentage of his pay. He continually put in motions to the board to restore his pay and get back pay, although he did not attend the meetings or do the work that was required of him in order to receive that pay. Because this board member kept putting forward motions, the other board members were required to attend these meetings and attend this discussion repeatedly, which is not the most valuable use of their time. The average student who just comes to school and goes home doesn't really know what their student fees are going to, which is why we've created this position so we can keep students informed about where their student fees are going, and that the people we've elected to represent us are representing us the way we want to be represented. So on May 31st, 2024, the last day of the previous board being in office, they put in a board accountability policy. At the next board meeting of this current board of directors, they put forward a motion to repeal this policy and abolish the executive portfolio critic position that was established as an accountability mechanism after the issues that the previous board experienced with certain board members not attending and not fulfilling their roles and responsibilities. The purpose of this policy was to create a mechanism by which the organization's elected student leadership can benefit from constructive criticism, alternative perspective, and reasoned critique for the work of student executive portfolios. At the last CSU board meeting, there was a motion put forward by the president, Angad Brar, to abolish the executive portfolio positions and abolish the board accountability policy. So the executive portfolio is what each elected executive is responsible for. So the VP Equity Sustainability is responsible for all initiatives around equity and sustainability, for example. The executive portfolio critic positions were created to select students to be critics for each of these portfolio positions. So there are 5 positions created to hold each executive board member accountable. So when the president, Angad Brar, put forward this motion to repeal the board accountability policy and abolish the executive portfolio positions, the rationale behind this was that all 5 executives had a discussion that the critics are not required because everything is going great and everyone is working towards their goals to achieve for this year. The executive committee recommends that these 5 critics are not required for the board. So this policy is going to be voted on at the next board meeting and was put forward by the same people that this policy was meant to keep accountable. We want to know what you think. Do you think the executive portfolio critics should be abolished? All students are welcome to attend the CSU board meetings. You can find the link on their website at csu.bc.ca. If you go to the calendar, you'll see the Google Meets link for every meeting there. Every student is welcome to attend these meetings and ask questions and make comments. If you want to speak at one of these meetings, you can can send a request to speak@csu.bc.ca. I encourage all students to go to these meetings and ask questions and speak out, because this is within our rights as students. So if you want to attend these meetings in person, the CSU boardroom is in the Maple building, right across from the pool table. We'll be making these videos every 2 weeks after the CSU board meetings. If you want to stay informed on what the CSU is doing, make sure you keep watching our videos.